And so it's my opportunity to come here and talk with you about what the law really means and what's happening here at the state level. Okay, apparently it's not loud enough. Is that better?
Get closer.
I'll like eat the mic. Okay, so just a few things about our organization that I want you to know. One is we've been around since it's been about 18 years. We've been working here in Minnesota, but gradually over that time, we have also started working in Washington, D.C., meeting with members of Congress and meeting with their staff and trying to share our insights and our information about what's happening. Because one thing about Minnesota is it's not in our favor, but it is definitely moving faster the way some people in Washington want it to go. And so that gives our organization a lot of experience with this progressive move towards national health care, because it's coming here in lots of different ways. Things that other states have never even thought to do, our state is already doing. So in the wrong direction, we believe, our state is going, and that gives us a lot of experience when it comes to going to Congress. I want you to know the last time that I was in Washington, D.C. was just a time that we picked for me to go there and have some appointments. But wouldn't you know, it was the actual week that the ObamaCare ruling came down. So on the morning that it was going to happen, actually I was in the Supreme Court on Monday, it came down on Thursday. We thought it might happen on Monday, so we went up there, and the two of us were the last two people let in, and it was the immigration ruling. So on Thursday, by myself, at 7:30 in the morning, I just got in line, and I thought, well, maybe, and I was one of the last 8 people let in. And it was such an environment, if you've never been there. It was quiet, really quiet. They make you be quiet. They also make you sit still. If you start even kind of like fidgeting, they're on you. So it's really, really quiet. And when he first started talking, when Chief Justice Roberts first started talking, it was very exciting. It was very clear that the decision was going in the direction of the mandate being found unconstitutional. It was so exciting. But I will not forget the moment that he said, but that is not the end of the matter. And suddenly, everybody who was kind of looking excited in the audience was no longer looking so excited. And the whole mood switched. The people who had been excited were not excited. The people who were down in the dumps were up. And you could hardly move, but you could see these little expressions on people's faces. And so it was a difficult time to hear that decision, but it was also an exciting time because it was historic. And we have a lot of work to do because the justices didn't rule in the right direction, saying that we have, that although it's not a mandate for us to purchase health insurance, we can be charged and penalized if we don't. And that has ramifications for our country well beyond health care. Anything that the government decides that they want us to do, we can be charged for with a penalty tax, right? So it has ramifications above and beyond ObamaCare. So ObamaCare is one of the hottest issues at the state legislature, but you'd hardly know. But one of the reasons you know it's a really hot issue is because the House and the Senate publications are regularly talking about it. The House and the Senate committees are holding 2 days worth for a hearing. And usually it's like 1 day, and it's not a whole day. So it's like, just a few minutes of their 2 hours of time in a committee. It might be a half an hour. It could be 15 minutes. But now it's actually 2 days worth, which is usually about 4 to 6 hours. So you can see this is a really, really big bill. Senator Jim Metzen and his committee said this is one of the biggest things that has happened in healthcare reform in this state in 50 to 60 years. And he said we've got one shot to get it done. And so this is the imposition, this bill that is at the legislature, which is Senate File 1 and House File 5, this bill, which is called the Minnesota Insurance Marketplace, is really bringing ObamaCare into the state of Minnesota. It is codifying and putting it into statute in the state of Minnesota. It is essentially establishing a federal takeover center, a federal center, a federalized center that's really here to impose federal law across Minnesota, not only in insurance, but also in healthcare, in your healthcare, in the medical practice, and the treatment decisions that happen. It's the whole gamut. And if this board, if this takeover center actually gets installed, we will all feel the impact in a variety of ways. So I'm going to spend a lot of my talk tonight telling you what this bill actually says so that you know what it is. Because we really believe there should be much more of a public outcry about what's happening here than is happening. And sometimes I had one legislator tell me today that he looks at what the hot issue is, the one that the media is all talking about, and one of those issues is the whole thing about guns. And he looks like several issues below to see what it is that's really going on down here, that the whole public is being distracted by up here. But this is the really big issue. And so this is the takeover of your healthcare, of the healthcare system in this country, state by state. And this is the Minnesota, whoa, this is the Minnesota bill to do it. So can you all hear me better now? Yes. Okay. You can't tell when you're up here, you have no idea, but I did suddenly feel a raise in the sound. So, just so that I can actually see my own notes. This is how I want you to think of the Minnesota insurance marketplace, which is actually the ObamaCare Health Insurance Exchange, which is actually IT connections. Do you understand IT? Information technology, online, internet. IT connections from all the state agencies in the state of Minnesota. They open up their portals to all their databases. They open up their portals to the internet connections, and those internet connections take information from all the state databases and send it to the mothership. And the mothership is called the Federal Data Services Hub, built by the federal government. And the Federal Data Services Hub is like a spider. And what it does is it goes into the open portals of all the state databases and into the open portals of all the federal databases. And what it does is it creates a comprehensive profile of every person, gathering all the data from all the different agencies and other entities. So from your health insurance company, from different databases around the country, maybe from credit firms, credit card firms. It's really hard to say because what the law actually says is there's all this sharing of your data. And so you just have to try and think of it first as a takeover center, second as an entire IT superstructure connecting Minnesota to the mothership of the federal government, and then third you need to think about it as a board. And a board that is not under state law. Because I'm going to just share with you some of the things according to the bill they're trying to pass about the board that you need to understand so that you understand how the control will not be, you will lose the control, the state of Minnesota will lose the control, and this is all being from the federal government. This is all coming from the federal government. This board must follow the federal government, Obamacare, the law, and all the rules. And so far there's 13,000 pages of Obamacare rules. So remember that the bill was 2,700 pages, and the rules are already over 13,000 pages. Now I want to, before I go forward into the board, I just wanted to give you a visual. Now sometimes I bring my Obamacare bill to presentations, but I didn't think about it this time. But my Obamacare bill is the short version. It's 901 pages long because they squeezed it down so people would actually copy the thing. It could, 2,700 pages. Well, my bill is from here to here. Now, think of it being up here and then up here. 2,700 pages. Mine is only 900. So you have to multiply that by 3. That's the bill that Congress was asked to pass and did. Do you think anybody read that bill? No. So we're only finding out what's in it. And then how many people do you think have read their 13,000 pages of regulations? Right? Only the people who wrote it and the people who have to follow it. So there are lawyers out there certainly reading them. But when it comes to the impact on your lives, you have 2,700 pages plus more than 13,000 pages and more to come. New rules, proposed rules were just issued today about the individual mandate and about family coverage. And together they equal about 150 pages, and they want your comments on them. Okay, so just try and grasp how big and mammoth this is as a change for our country. There are things coming that you haven't even thought about. There are particularly fiscal cliffs of your own that a lot of you are going to face because of the sticker shock coming on the prices. So there's a lot of stuff coming that's going to impact you in a very negative way. But I want to talk to you about the board. And I want to tell you why you should be very worried and very actively engaged. So I consider this a federal takeover board, or you could call it a state healthcare board, but it's federalized. There are 7 people. According to the bill, they want 7 people appointed by the governor and confirmed by the Senate. One bill has the Senate and the House, but then they decided that the House couldn't do it. If I think I have that right. But anyway, it's the governor who appoints them. And these appointees don't even have to be in the state of Minnesota, said Representative Atkins, the author of the House bill. They could be appointees from the federal government, they could be appointees from Virginia or California or Washington or wherever. So they can be anybody, not anybody even familiar with Minnesota. There are 7 people obviously voting, but they only need 4 votes to pass it. And there are only 3 places for consumer representatives. So the consumers, the so-called citizens, and we don't even know if they would really represent citizens, right? Often they don't. But nonetheless, the consumer representatives could never outvote the one bureaucrat and the 3 other industry or policy or whatever appointees. So the citizens, the consumers, are at a grand disadvantage in here. I'm sorry, I just have the wrong date here, so just 1 second. All right. So the board has to follow federal law, and the state law, the state bill is all set up to do that because it exempts the board from so many key laws that other state agencies have to follow. And this is, after all, a brand new state agency, federalized, deputized for the federal government, as it were, that's being set up here. But here's one of the really key things it doesn't have to follow. It doesn't have to follow all the rulemaking requirements of other state agencies. And that's the Administrative Procedures Act, which sounds like a real mouthful. But here's what it means. When the legislature passes a law, or when Congress passes a law, sometimes what they say is that rulemaking can happen. And so if they say something like, I want to explain to you what rulemaking is, because there's the law and then there's rulemaking. And rulemaking is all the lines that come between the law. It's like if they tell you every person has to have a red mailbox, just an example, right? Then that would be the law. Every person has to have a red mailbox. But how would it be implemented? How would they make sure it happens? That's where the rules get made, right? 10 people have to go out, it has to be this color red, we have to check on this, you have to do it between this date and this date. All those little things about how to actually implement the law, that's what's called rulemaking. And when those rules are made, even though they were never voted on by your legislators, they never even read by your legislators, when those rules are made, there is an opportunity for the public to comment. And then in Minnesota, under the rulemaking requirements, if you don't like what you see, you can send in a letter saying, I oppose the rules. If 25 people send in a letter saying, I oppose the rules, the agency is required to hold a public hearing before an administrative law judge, because this is your last resort to not having a law imposed on you, and to have something to say about it, because these are unelected people. There's no votes being taken on it, and so all of your elected representatives aren't even in the room. So this is your last resort. So this is called the Rulemaking Requirements Statute, and they would exempt this board of 7 political appointees by the governor, who could be from outside the state of Minnesota, who can make rules about anything and everything, and it would exempt them from the rulemaking statute, which would mean that you would have absolutely zero input. Now, one of the bills, actually both of the bills say that for a time you can comment. But the fact that you can write a letter but they don't have to do anything with it, that's no power, right? Senator Lori, who has the Senate bill, Senate File 1, to impose this entire system on us, he actually wrote a law, his people, that they actually have some potential of having input. And here's what I testified to. I said, you know, even with the expedited rulemaking, let's just say the board decided to be kind and do expedited rulemaking. Expedited rulemaking is for emergencies. And expedited rulemaking, you can't make any comments and they just like get it done. Unless the law says you have the option of 100 letters. But if it doesn't specifically say in this bill that you will have that option, you do not. And so they can do expedited rulemaking, giving you no option to comment at all, no option to get a public hearing. They just ram all of these things through. So I guess what we can say about this is the whole plan here is to make sure that you have no input whatsoever, and all the rules that all the words that they write about rulemaking, if you happen to read this bill, it's not very long. Everything that they write about rulemaking is actually just there to kind of confuse the issue as a red herring. The only thing you have to see is that little statement that says exempt, and that's what carries the day. Did you have a question?
On these people that are appointed, are they appointed for life, a year, during the governor's administration? How are they changed?
Well, we do not yet know, and the bills are different. So one of the bills says that they are appointed in 4-year staggered terms. So, but until we have the very end of this bill, we will not know exactly how long they are appointed.
Could we hold the questions until Twila finishes her remarks? There'll be plenty of time to ask questions there. Thank you.
So I'm really stressing this because the interesting thing about this is that almost every testifier, including those that even kind of have supported the implementation of this, are complaining about the rulemaking. And so everybody is very, very concerned. But if you don't understand what you're missing here, and you don't understand how important this is, and you don't understand that your last resort is being taken away from you, then you won't say anything. And my hope, of course, is that you will tell your legislators what you think about this, because this should not be. You should be able to get a public hearing before rules become law that you have to abide with and fall under and will impact your lives. Okay, in addition to that, it's exempt from the Data Practices Act. And the Data Practices Act means all the data that the government holds on you, all the different agencies that have data on you, they have to treat it in a certain way. And if they don't treat it in that certain way, you can actually take them to court and they have to pay penalties. In addition to that, they have to give information as a government agency to you when you ask. So you can make a request of them about anything, and they have to give you the information. They have to give you emails that they're sent. They have to give you all sorts of things. They may redact some of the people's names or some of the information, but they have to give it all to you. But being exempt from that means that you can go to this new federal takeover center and you can ask all you want, but they don't have to give you anything. So it's about both of these two laws that they want to be exempt from are about accountability and transparency and about public power. And both of them, they are not interested in giving you any power over what they're planning to do. As a matter of fact, Senator Lori, when we got a member of the Senate to do an amendment on the 100 letters one, saying that they had to put that provision in so you all could at least get 100 letters. Senator Lori, when he realized what that was before they took a vote on the amendment, he said, so the exchange could be hampered by letters from 100 people? No, I oppose this amendment. And another representative today that I talked with said, it's easy to get 100 people. We can't afford to have 100 people who will stop this. So you can see where this, the ruling party of this legislature is going. Their plan is, you get no input whatsoever. Okay, they'd also be exempt from the Department of Administration oversight. They'd be exempt from the state auditor. They'd only have the legislative auditor that would be checking up on them. They'd be exempt from contracting and procurement laws that every other state agency has to do. They'd be exempt from coordinating their IT and their data systems with the Office of Enterprise Technology, and they would have closed meetings for all sorts of things. So there are things that every other agency only occasionally closes their meeting for, and some of them that they can't, but here it says that these meetings on these things like contract negotiations, personnel, and data sharing could all be closed to the public. Okay, in addition to that, this board of 7 unelected political appointees from who knows where is going to be able to say what health plans are going to be available to you if you happen to be forced to purchase health care on this IT infrastructure, on this website. Because what the exchange really is, what Obama's exchange really is a federalized website with a Minnesota name hooked to a federal hub that goes to the federal agencies, and all the data gets collected, and then it comes back to you on your little computer and says, these are the health plans available to you, according to your employment, according to your age, according to your income, according to all sorts of things, right? So even people who are Medicaid eligible but really don't want to have Medicaid, they want to buy their own private policy, they won't be given private policies. They will be given Medicaid. So this board will decide what kind of health plans are actually visible on the website, visible on the screen to you. And that means the health plan you have today, they might decide, nope, not that one. Or the kind of coverage that that health plan has, nope, we need it to be different coverage before we will approve it. So they will have control, and you'll have nothing to say about it because, again, you can't say anything about whatever rules or decisions that they come up with. In addition to that, they're going to interfere with patient care. There's a whole section of the bill that talks about care coordination and health improvement. And when Senator Gazelka last night did an amendment to take that out, and he asked Senator Lori, the author of the bill, he said, what exactly is this for? And he said, this is for population health. We need the health plans to be doing population health. Well, just look up population health. Population health is very different than individualized health care. It's really the government looking at you all like just one big group, not as individuals, and then deciding what's good for the whole group as compared to the individual. And he opposed that amendment as well, and so that is still in the bill. One thing about the health plans that ObamaCare requires that a lot of people don't know, and it's this very tiny little sentence, or 2 sentences in the bill, but it's only about, like, if you think 2,700 pages and then you think about this kind of a space in the bill. And it says that the Secretary of Health and Human Services, through the health plans, can decide that a doctor is not providing quality care. And if she decides that a doctor is not providing quality care, that doctor, she can X him out of the health plan, strike him off of the accessible doctors. Just like that, and that means he can't work for any health plan, right? So he's out of business. And there are members of there are Republican members in Congress who have an act called the Scope Act to try and repeal just this tiny little section that gives the Secretary of Health and Human Services the power to decide how you should be treated, and if they don't like how you're treated, in other words, if they're giving too much care to you, for instance, if they're costing the system too much money, then they can just be eliminated and their entire practice can be gone unless they can find enough cash paying patients. So that's one thing that can happen through the exchange, and that's the plan here, is that the exchange will be used to monitor the doctors and monitor the patients for outcomes. Okay, I want to just tell you a story, because I want to talk about data, but I just want to tell you a story about when I was in Romania. Because I think in this day and age of Facebook and Twitter and all these other sharing systems, LinkedIn, you know, there's a lot of data out there that people are perfectly happy to provide. And they're not really thinking about the power of data in the hand of a tyrant. But when I was in Romania several years ago, not very long after Ceausescu was killed by his own people, it was shortly thereafter, and about 9 months after, and an 18-year-old was taking some of us down the street in this Romanian town, and suddenly stopped at a corner and said, "Look at that building over there." And so we all stop and look, you know, it's the building. He said the tallest building. Well, it was all about 4 stories high. Romania is very poor. And he said, on the day that Ceausescu was murdered, as soon as the word came to his father got 2 of his friends, and they immediately ran to that building. That was the government building. And all the doors were flung open because all of the government bureaucrats had fled, because obviously Ceausescu had been killed by his people, right? So they were scared. His father and 2 men went up to the top floor, flung open the windows, and started to throw out every file in every file cabinet, because those were all files on all the people in the town, gathered from the surveillance, gathered from all the data that Ceausescu's people, bureaucrats, kept on all the people in his town. And he was there, this 18-year-old was there to watch the grand bonfire created. But do you see what the rush was? The first thing on that man's mind was not to go have a party somewhere. The first thing on his mind was to go to the place where every piece of data on every person in that town had been collected, stored, recorded, and to get rid of it as soon as possible, lest the opportunity be missed. But yet, what I have told you about this system is that it's a huge IT system. It's a huge data sharing system. It's essentially creating a national database on all of us, a decentralized one, because as I said, the federal hub goes out like a spider and can gather up all the data from the open portals and go like, psh, this is Sarah Anderson, or whomever, right? We know where she's employed, we know what her healthcare conditions are, we know what her income is, we know what her tax status is, we know if she's ever been a criminal, all of these sorts of things. And so you see that I handed out to you these things right here. So I want you to just look at them. So look at this one first. Got the United States on it. And that just shows you step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, step 5. This is how the data happens under Obamacare. And what is being created in Minnesota is this little portal right here that this person is sitting at. They're just sitting at their computer. And there's going to be a website that's going to say Minnesota Health Insurance Exchange. It's already out there. You can actually find it. Minnesota Health Insurance Exchange. And this poor innocent person is just going to put in their data and think, I'm just buying health insurance. And they're not going to realize that the data they put in is then going to be matched, collected, and then matched with all the data that they find in the state databases and all the data in the federal databases. And you see all these federal databases here, and it shows you what kind of data is going to be collected and looked through from it. And it's sort of like a pinging of the federal hub, because the federal hub is supposed to be the sole data source for this whole process. And when you wonder, why do they need all this data just to buy health insurance? Well, we think of this system as a national system to register and monitor your compliance with the health insurance mandate. So they will know who has complied and who hasn't. And I talked to some IT people in the state of Minnesota. They said they are pre-populating the exchange. They're trying to figure out the very best databases in the state of Minnesota so they can get everybody's information available to the hub. And then this is a federal hub, right, which makes it available to the IRS. So we also look at this as an IRS enforcement system of the penalty and the tax. And they'll know who is and is not registered, who is and is not insured. And this one right here, this one is actually out of the contract between the state of Minnesota and Maximus. Maximus has gotten $41.2 million at least to build these IT connections to the hub. So they are building all the data work to connect up with the federal system. That's what they're building. And they're building the structure to open up all the state agency portals. And so this is right out of the contract, and you'll see right here in the middle, you'll see that what the contract actually says is federal MNHICS, Minnesota Health Insurance Exchange, MNHICS. Federal MNHICS. So it's really not a state entity at all. It is a website, it's a URL on the hub. The hub is the central server for this massive national system that will exchange your data, monitor you, know things about you. Now, there's a demonstration, there's 9 demonstration videos on Maximus, and if you take President Obama's system, situated, installed right here in the state of Minnesota to run healthcare from the federal government, from the mothership, right here in Minnesota, with a board that will be unelected, a board that will be of appointees, a board that may or may not be people in the state of Minnesota. Not under the rule of law, really, in the state, exempt from all sorts of laws here, making rules that you'll have no input to, and monitoring you. I mean, it's really, when Senator Metzen says this is the biggest healthcare reform thing he's seen and that has hit our state in 50 to 60 years, it's absolutely true. He says that it's got one shot to get it done, and I'm hoping that you'll help make that very difficult for him. Let me see, I just want to, and the USA Today says about the hub, that this is the largest consolidation of personal information in the history of the Republic. So this is a real thing. It's being built by the federal government, and Minnesota has received $165 million to set up the IT connections. And after that, people who use the system will pay the cost. So I'd like to say that there's a lot of deception on this. So it's being called the Minnesota Insurance Marketplace. Marketplace was found in a study to be a word that anti-government folks and anti-healthcare reform folks really worked for them. So even at the federal level, they have changed everything to call it the Health Insurance Marketplace. But you might know that the marketplace exists out there, that the government doesn't create the marketplace. Often it follows it up, right? And it regulates the marketplace. The marketplace, the true marketplace, has freedom. As I told one group of legislators, in the true marketplace, unlike this so-called marketplace, the government marketplace, right? In the real marketplace, the person who has no money or no job or $30,000 income or whatever you want to say, gets to look at a Ferrari and dream of how he might make it his own. But in this marketplace, you will get the choices that the Board of 7 have decided are the only choices you should see. They call it giving you manageable choices. So it's not a marketplace, and that's a really big deception. We think it's moving to a single seller system. We believe that, like in Washington, D.C. and Vermont, where they have decided that every citizen within its borders has to use the exchange. They have to use Obama's exchange. They have to use this IT infrastructure to buy health insurance. They have to go through the federal government to buy health insurance. That's really what this is. You are buying health insurance at the government's approval, at the federal government's approval, and you are going into the federal government in order to make the purchase. So we think it's going to be a single seller system. That's the plan, that all of us will have to be in there in order for it to be sustainable. Every exchange that has ever been tried in history, except for Massachusetts, which was a single payer system, essentially, or a mandated state. But every other exchange has died because not enough people went into it. So that's actually a ray of hope. There's a possibility here that when people figure out how intrusive and controlling this is, that they won't use it. And if you don't use it, or if you refuse to go in it, and you can refuse, there's absolutely no requirement that you do. There's actually no requirement that you buy health insurance, and it will be cheaper for you if you don't. But if you don't use it and they don't get enough people to use it, the whole thing can fall apart. But we would like to stop it in Minnesota, or hobble it if we can. So one of the ways that this is being forced onto you, and you may have heard this, is that they're saying it is better for the state of Minnesota to create their own exchange than to have the federal government force it onto us, their version of it. And I would contend to you two things. One, no matter what kind of exchange it is, it has to follow federal law and federal rules. There's no out. I've read the law. Every exchange has to follow the federal law and the federal rules. The other thing is that I think that the federal exchange is a bluff. I think President Obama and company were thinking, if we put the state exchange in here, the states will just feel like they have to do this. And they will just do the work for us. Because then we don't have to pay for it. If they don't do it, and if they don't pay for it themselves, we have to pay for it. And so they gave themselves no money in ObamaCare to build this thing. No money whatsoever. They asked the U.S. House for $750,000, and the U.S. House said no. So what they can't do, and they don't have money to do, is to build those IT lines, that whole internet online connection down into the states. And they wanted the states to build it up into the hub. And if they're going to have a federal exchange, they have to build it down from the hub into the states. And 32 states have so far said, no, we are not building the IT lines up into the hub. We are not going to have this whole thing. We're not going to have a website with our name on. We're not going to have a board. We're not going to have this connection to the federal government. We're not going to make our people go through the federal government to buy their health insurance. So, I think that the federal exchange is a bluff. They gave themselves no money. They still have no money to do it, and they aren't pushing it. They were supposed to start building it this month. They took away their own deadline for building it. I think so that people wouldn't get the hint that actually they can't do it, because they need this bluff and this threat to stay out there to get as many states as possible. And you'll still hear at the Capitol, Representative Atkins, Senator Lori, we got to build our own so that they don't impose it on us. Well, this is the imposition of Obama's exchange. Terminology aside, his whole plan is to build a national exchange, one hub, 50 websites with 50 different state names on, but the hub is the main server. They're all federalized websites. It's just one big national superstructure, IT superstructure. So yay for the states that have said no. Those will be the free states. Our state will probably be an Obamacare state, but it doesn't mean that it can't fail. And I look forward to, even if they put it in, I look forward to helping it to fail. It's different than build it and they will come. Build it and they won't. It'll be a great loss of money. It's a great loss of money right now for, we all pay federal taxes. So, there's $165 million in federal taxes. But it's a far better thing to lose this beast in our state, and to worry about the money. So the other thing that I wanted to say before I close is we have a solution for healthcare that we think would work well, that would really look at patients as the individuals that they are, would look at healthcare as how to bring it down to the pocketbook like it used to be. It used to be at the pocketbook level, and is compassionate and caring and has responsibility built into it, and we call it the 4C solution. So the first C is cash, and that means cash for all the minor and routine care. It means that you wouldn't pull out an insurance card. It means, as a matter of fact, that your clinic wouldn't ask for a card. As soon as you come in, the first thing they would say is, "Hi, Mr. Jones." Not, "Do you have an insurance card?" Right? It's all about insurance today. But we believe that the only way to bring healthcare down to the pocketbook is to have cash for routine and minor care. And some of you are thinking, "Oh, no, I could never afford that." But so I want to give you just a few examples. For instance, there's an MRI place up in Plymouth that the MRIs that I saw on their sheet were like, $199 to, $200 or $300, right? The MRIs you can get in the hospital can cost you $1,500 more, right? So here's a place doing MRIs for cash, under $200. There's a clinic called the Patmos Clinic in Tennessee, and that is pay at the moment of service, Patmos. Patmos Clinic has people on Medicaid that come and pay. And he helps them to negotiate prices with the hospital. The first time I heard about him, he had 3,000 patients. The next time I heard about him, he had 7,000 patients and was looking for another doctor. Everybody pays cash. A few people negotiate with chickens. But for the most part, it's cash. And there's also a surgical center that uses cash. They will give you the information that you need for your insurance company, but it's really cash. They don't take Medicare and they don't take Medicaid. And their prices are a third of the hospital down the street. So a lot of the first people that came when they opened up was all the Canadians. Then people started coming from all around the country. And so I like to let people know about them because they have excellent doctors, and they also don't do electronic medical records, so that your privacy is something that they sell. As in, they don't sell your privacy. As in, your privacy is a selling feature for their clinic. They will not put your information online. And they don't take Medicare, so they're not going to get the reduced payment for Medicare. That's going to happen to every doctor and every hospital that refuses to use electronic medical records. Electronic tracking systems is what they really are. Okay, first was cash. Second is catastrophic coverage. We should all have, we don't all need it, but catastrophic coverage where it's truly for a catastrophe. So you put your health insurance policy in a drawer and you hope that the rare thing that you never want to happen doesn't happen to you. And so you don't pull it out all the time, you don't have a card all the time. It's just there for your security. And then you use it when you really have a catastrophe. The third thing is charity, because everybody, and I want to say about catastrophic coverage, Obamacare makes catastrophic coverage illegal for anyone over the age of 30, over the age of 29. So if you are 30 and over, you cannot have a true catastrophic policy. It has been made illegal under Obamacare. Most people don't know that. That's why a lot of people are losing their policies, their individual policies, because they were catastrophic policies, and it's no longer allowed. So the third thing is charity, and charity is so essential because charity is what medicine is all about. It's a charitable enterprise. It was created to help people, and we have moved healthcare into the business. We have moved the mission of medicine into the business of healthcare. We've impersonalized it. We've made you show your card. We've made you give away all your data. We ask you questions about your guns. We all do all this stuff. We gather all this data about you as though you're a product, a widget, and you're really the patient. And so we've lost the compassion. And there will always be a need for charity. Even in Canada, there's a need for charity. Care that they can't get. care that the health plan says, not medically necessary for you, right? There will always be a need for charity for those who truly can't afford it. And then the last one is confidentiality. And I really hope, and confidentiality is all about control. He who holds the data makes the rules. So when you think about the federal hub, the IT system, the exchange, which is really a grand data exchange, a superstructure to share all your data, when you think about that, you realize who you're giving the control to. So we believe in confidentiality because we know that's how you can control what happens between you and the doctor, and that's how the doctor can make decisions that are personalized to you without the government or the health plan coming after them and saying, it doesn't fit the protocol. If your care doesn't fit the protocol, 85% of the time, we're going to dock your pay. And protocols are what health plans and the government are putting out to standardize the practice of medicine. And I know for a fact that none of you are standard. You're as unique as your DNA, as your mental capacity, as your choices, as your cultures, as your options, as your side effects, as your genes. You know, you're that unique. But the whole plan here is to standardize medical care and move everybody into this way of practicing medicine. I had one doctor say to me that if it's not on the computer, I can't do it. And that's where we're moving in medicine. That's why I say move back to the mission of medicine and away from the business of healthcare. So, thank you much for your time and attention. I'm sure you have lots of questions. I didn't cover half of Obamacare, but it's so important to me for you to understand what's at stake at the Minnesota Capitol and whether or not we're going to have the federal law imposed on us through this unelected board that will make all the decisions outside of state law and outside of your purview or input. So, thank you very much.